Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at something that's been all over the news lately. You know, Elon Musk and his comments about Wikipedia.
Yeah, it's gotten a lot of attention, that's for sure.
A lot of attention, so we figured we'd dive in and see what we can uncover here. We've got a couple of great sources for this one, a Newsweek article and a Reddit thread with a ton of discussion about this whole thing. So let's jump right in. Basically, Musk is accusing Wikipedia of being biased, right?
That's right. He's calling them Wokepedia.
Wokepedia. I mean,
And catchy, isn't it?
it is catchy, but he's not just throwing out insults. He's actually pointing to their budget as evidence of this bias.
Yeah, that's where things get interesting.
So according to Newsweek, Wikipedia's annual report shows they're spending a significant chunk of change on things like equity and safety and inclusion, like over $31 million on equity and another $20 million on safety and inclusion out of a total budget of $177 million.
And that's what Musk is latching onto.
He's basically saying this spending reflects a particular ideological slant. And, you know, for those who aren't familiar with the term woke, it's become this kind of loaded term often used to criticize what some see as an excessive focus on social justice issues.
Right, so Musk seems to be implying that Wikipedia is pushing a specific agenda, and he's using their funding allocation as proof.
So the question is, does this spending actually translate into bias in the content on Wikipedia?
Well, that's what we're here to figure out. But before we get into that, I think it's important to remember just how influential Wikipedia is. I mean, we're talking about the fourth most visited website globally, with something like 6.7 billion visits every month, according to SEMrush.
Wow, that's a lot of eyeballs.
It is, so any perceived bias could have a huge impact.
Absolutely. And Musk isn't exactly keeping quiet about his concerns. He took to Twitter, or X as it's now called, to share a post from Libs of TikTok. You know, that account that often shares content critical of left-leaning perspectives.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that one.
And Musk added his own commentary, telling his followers to stop donating to Wokepedia until they restore balance to their editing authority.
So he's really trying to mobilize his supporters and put pressure on Wikipedia.
It seems like it. And this is where the whole open editing model of Wikipedia comes into play, right?
Exactly. Anyone can contribute, which is great for diversity, but can also lead to problems.
Like those infamous edit wars.
Yeah, you get different perspectives clashing, sometimes leading to biased information being added or even removed.
So it's both a strength and a weakness.
It is.
Now, interestingly enough, Newsweek reached out to Musk for comment, but he didn't respond.
So he's making these accusations but not engaging in a dialogue.
Seems that way. But Wikipedia did respond. In their statement to Newsweek, they emphasized their commitment to diversity and inclusion, saying that their equity work is about making sure people from all walks of life can participate in building the encyclopedia.
So they're pushing back against Musk's claims, saying it's about representation, not bias.
Right.
But it's important to remember that Wikipedia has faced accusations of bias from both sides of the political spectrum. For example, back in 2018, The Guardian published an article criticizing Wikipedia for promoting what they called a male-dominated pro-Western worldview.
Oh, interesting.
They were concerned about the lack of female editors, which was only around 16% at the time.
So these concerns about bias aren't new, and they're not limited to one side.
Exactly.
It's a complex issue.
It is. And to make things even more complicated, there was a study published in 2024 by a computational science professor named David Rosado. He analyzed the language used in tons of Wikipedia articles about prominent figures, and guess what he found? A tendency to portray right-leaning figures more negatively than left-leaning ones.
Huh. So we're seeing potential bias emerging from different sources, using different methods, and coming to different conclusions.
Yeah, it makes you wonder who's right.
It really does. Speaking of different opinions, let's talk about that Reddit thread we mentioned. It's full of people debating the validity of Musk's Wokepedia claim.
Oh yeah, that thread is a goldmine.
Some users are pointing to the budget figures as proof that something's fishy, while others argue that Musk is just cherry-picking examples and ignoring the overall neutrality of Wikipedia.
Right, it's like two sides of the same coin. Both agree that neutrality is important. They just disagree on whether Wikipedia is achieving it.
And it all comes back to that inherent challenge of crowdsourcing, right? How do you ensure fairness and balance when anyone can contribute?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. And then there's the question of powerful voices, whether it's billionaires like Musk or organized groups with specific agendas. How do you prevent them from skewing the information?
It's a tough one. Wikipedia has always prided itself on being a neutral source of information. but it seems like that neutrality is under attack from all sides.
So is Wikipedia failing, or is this just a reflection of our increasingly polarized world?
That's a great question. And I honestly don't think there's an easy answer. On the one hand, the fact that criticisms are coming from both sides could mean they're doing okay. Like, if everyone's unhappy, maybe that means they're striking a balance.
That makes sense.
But on the other hand, the intensity of these criticisms and the real-world examples of bias we've seen suggest that maybe the system is cracking under pressure.
So maybe it's not about whether Wikipedia is biased or not, but a matter of degrees. No platform can be perfectly neutral, especially when it relies on human editors with their own biases.
Right. The question is how much bias is too much?
And who gets to decide that?
Exactly. And just to throw another wrench in the gears, Jimmy Wales, the co-founder of Wikipedia, actually denied these woke bias claims in an interview last year.
Really?
Yeah, he pointed to Wikipedia's long tradition of respecting free speech, suggesting that they aren't deliberately pushing an agenda.
So we've got Musk claiming woke bias, critics from the left arguing for a pro-Western slant, evidence of both positive and negative bias, depending on who you ask, and the co-founder of Wikipedia denying any intentional bias. It's a lot to unpack.
It is, and it highlights the complexity of this whole issue. I think the main takeaway here is that we need to be much more critical consumers of information, especially online. We can't just take things at face value, even if it's from a source we generally trust, like Wikipedia.
So, we need to be aware of the potential for bias, understand the limitations of crowdsourcing, and be willing to seek out multiple perspectives.
Absolutely.
This whole controversy, as messy as it is, can serve as a wake-up call, a reminder that the fight for accurate, unbiased information is never truly over.
And that we all have a role to play in that fight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So as we move into the next part of our deep dive, we're going to shift our focus to the broader implications of this whole thing. What does it tell us about the relationship between technology, information, and power? And what are the potential consequences for our understanding of the world? Stay tuned.
It's funny, when you think about it, this all kind of ties back into Musk's own political leanings, right? Like, he was a huge supporter of Trump during that 2024 campaign.
Yeah, that's right. And didn't Trump actually appoint him to co-head that new Department of Government Efficiency?
He did.
Do you think there's a connection there between his political views and this whole Wokepedia thing?
I mean, it's definitely possible, but, you know, even if there is, I think the bigger question here is, well, what does this whole controversy tell us about what's happening online more broadly?
Yeah, let's zoom out a bit. What are the bigger trends here?
Well, I think what's really significant is this pattern we're seeing of powerful figures, often with very strong political opinions, trying to control the information that's out there.
It's like a battle for the digital public square.
Right.
And the outcome is going to have a huge impact on whether we can even have free and open knowledge anymore.
Exactly. If even Wikipedia, which is supposed to be this neutral source of information, can become this battleground for ideology, I mean, where does that leave us? Where can we turn for reliable information if it seems like every source has an agenda?
It makes you wonder if the internet really is the democratizing force we all thought it would be.
Right. Back in the day, everyone was saying it would be this great equalizer, that it would break down barriers and give everyone a voice.
Yeah. But then a story like this comes along, and you realize just how much power is still concentrated in the hands of a select few.
It's a reminder that the battle for control of information is far from over.
And the stakes are incredibly high. We're not just talking about abstract concepts here, right? This affects how people understand the world, how they form opinions, how they vote. It impacts their lives.
Exactly. The information we consume literally shapes our reality. So when that information is being controlled or manipulated or distorted, well, the consequences can be huge.
Imagine a world where people are only exposed to information that reinforces their existing biases.
You get polarization, echo chambers, people stop trusting institutions. They even stop trusting each other.
And that's what these powerful forces are counting on, right? It's like a classic divide and conquer tactic.
When people are distrustful and divided, it's easier to control them.
So where do we go from here? What can we do to make sure the internet lives up to its potential as this force for good?
That's the million-dollar question. And honestly, I don't think there's an easy answer. But the first step, I think, is awareness. We need to be aware of the forces at play, the biases that shape the information we consume, and the ways technology can be used to manipulate us.
So we can't just be passive bystanders. We have to be active participants in shaping the information landscape.
Exactly. We need to be critical thinkers, skeptical of the information we're given, and we need to speak up for a more open, equitable, and trustworthy internet.
So it sounds like you're saying we need to be more proactive in seeking out different perspectives, challenging our own assumptions.
Absolutely. It's not enough to just consume information. We have to engage with it critically. We have to ask questions, consider different viewpoints, be willing to change our minds when presented with new evidence.
It's so easy to get caught in our own little echo chambers, surrounded by people who agree with us all the time. But that's not how we grow.
Exactly. We need to break out of those echo chambers and expose ourselves to different viewpoints, even if they make us uncomfortable. That's where real learning and understanding happen.
So it's not about avoiding bias altogether, right?
hmm
It's about recognizing that bias exists everywhere, even within ourselves, and learning to navigate it in a thoughtful way.
Exactly. It's about developing that healthy skepticism, being able to think critically, and fostering a culture of open-mindedness and intellectual humility.
I think that's a great message for our listeners. As we wrap up this part of the conversation, I want to leave everyone with one final thought. If something like Wikipedia, which seems so neutral on the surface, can become this battleground for ideology, what does that tell us about the challenges we face in accessing reliable information online? And even more importantly, what can we do to make sure we're not just consuming information, but actively engaging with it, questioning it, and helping to shape the information landscape for the better?
Those are excellent questions. And the future of information online, maybe even the future of democracy itself, depends on our ability to be informed, engaged, and discerning citizens in the digital age.
It's like we're living in this weird paradox.
Oh, totally.
We have access to more information than ever before, but figuring out what to trust is getting harder and harder.
It's like we're lost in a jungle of data with all these trees blocking the view.
And it's not just about random facts or trivia, right? This is about the stuff that shapes how we see the world, our political views, our health decisions, everything.
Exactly. It's about who gets to tell the story, who decides what's true, and ultimately who has the power in this digital age. And like we saw with Wikipedia, that power is always up for grabs.
So where do we go from here? How do we even begin to navigate all of this?
Well, the first thing is to be skeptical. Don't just believe everything you read. Ask questions, look at where the information is coming from, find the evidence, and be open to challenging your own assumptions.
Like being a detective, right?
Exactly. You got to gather the clues, piece it all together. And remember, there's rarely one right answer, especially with these big social and political issues. Embrace the nuance, be open to different perspectives, and be ready to change your mind if new information comes up.
And we got to remember that we all have biases,
Right.
right? Those biases can really affect how we see things.
Totally. That's why it's so important to be aware of our own biases and to look for different perspectives.
So we can't just stick to one source of information.
Right. Don't rely on just one platform, one website, or one news outlet. Read widely, listen to different voices, and cross-check everything.
It's like having a balanced diet, but for your mind.
I love that. Just like we need different nutrients to be healthy, we need a variety of viewpoints.
So we need to be critical thinkers. We need to get our information from lots of different places. And we need to be active in shaping the information landscape, not just passive consumers.
Absolutely. We got to engage, we got to question, we got to contribute. It's not just about protecting ourselves from misinformation. It's about creating a society where everyone is informed and engaged.
Because when we're all more informed, we can actually have real conversations,
Yeah,
make better decisions, and build a stronger world, right?
exactly.
Well, this deep dive has been a wide ride.
It has. Lots of insights, challenges, and things to think about.
And to our listeners, we hope this has given you some new tools and perspectives to help you make sense of all the information out there. Stay curious, stay critical, and keep asking those tough questions.
And until next time, happy deep diving, everyone.